Hey, everybody. All right. Good evening. Thank you all for being here tonight. Today, all across the state of Michigan, voters cast their ballots safely and securely at busy, orderly, and well-managed polling places. Just as we saw a record number of citizens choose to vote prior to today with an absentee ballot, we also saw a steady stream of voters casting their ballots in person throughout today as well. All across the state, the process went smoothly. Voters were in and out of their polling places quickly and comfortably. This is one of the marks of a successful election, and it is thanks to the diligent preparation of Republican, Democratic, and Independent clerks who partnered with law enforcement and planned extensively to ensure every eligible citizen could exercise their right to make their voice heard and hold their elected leaders accountable. Because of their work, there were no widespread or major disruptions reported to us today, and any minor issues were addressed quickly and without stopping voters from casting their ballot. We know of two instances where poll challengers may have acted inappropriately, one in Ann Arbor and one in Detroit. But as our preparation was ready, poll workers followed the de-escalation practices that we had prepared. And after conversations, both challengers departed polling places without any major incidents. You may have heard about another issue earlier in the day with electronic poll books used in the city of Detroit, where a technology glitch emerged. Now, in that case, in a few instances this morning, upon checking in a voter, some electronic poll books at polling places displayed an error message stating that the number on the ballot that they were about to provide to the voter in the precinct was identical to a number on an absentee ballot that had already been issued. Now, when this occurred, the poll worker then simply added an additional letter to the precinct ballot to distinguish them from the absentee ballots. Then, voters, because they had actually not received or cast an absentee ballot or voted in any way already, were issued the precinct ballot, and in all circumstances, eligible voters were able to vote. Minor issues like this will always arise in elections, but the role of clerks, the Bureau of Elections, and our partners in law enforcement is to identify and address them and solve them immediately to protect the rights of every Michigan voter. And that's precisely what we did today. And I know we'll continue to do so as absentee ballot counting continues. When we identify an issue, we work to solve it quickly and make sure it has minimal, if any, disruptions to the process. Now, in the hours ahead, we know some jurisdictions may finish counting their absentee ballots and report results, unofficial results, more quickly than others. We already are seeing some of that occur. Across the state, election workers are going to continue to prioritize accuracy and security above all else, and we will continue to provide updates as the next 24 hours unfold and as the tabulation process continues. I'll close by thanking the scores of clerks, election workers, law enforcement officials, federal partners, and volunteers who contributed to making this election a smooth and secure success. I'm proud that our elections continue to be among the most safe, secure, and accurate in the nation, and the work that we saw today underscores that truth. So on that note, I'll close and take your questions.
Can you talk to us about those incidents with challengers in Detroit or Ann Arbor? What specifically happened and what were you being told?
We were alerted to potential disruptions and sent an individual in both instances to check to see what was going on. And in both instances, they had mostly been handled in precinct by the precinct captain by the time we were there, but they essentially involved repeated challenges or attempts at interference. And we're still getting all the details. But in the moment of an election itself, our first goal is simply just to de-escalate and minimize disruption and then allow more details to unfold.
With people that were coming to vote or people that were working within a precinct?
It appears that it was communication with voters.
You said this is a record number of absentees. What's driving that, and do you have the numbers?
Yes, we know 2 million citizens requested absentee votes. About 1.8 million had been returned today. More continue to be returned, of course, up until 8 p.m., which is the deadline. But at the same time, we saw a record number of people voting in person as well. And so we'll see how the data and the numbers unfold. But, voters in Michigan have an option. They have choices. And many choose to vote absentee. Many are choosing to vote in person. Our job is to make sure whatever option they choose, they can do so safely and securely and conveniently. Go ahead.
You listed only two poll challenge issues throughout the entire day here in Michigan. That's a shockingly low number based on the population here. Leading up to Election Day, clerks and groups have been telling us they were preparing for a lot of challenges and efforts to try and slow down the process. That really hasn't borne out here today. What can you say about what the concerns were leading up to today and what we actually saw happen?
What part of our work over the last few months has been to deter potential challenges by simply explaining the futility and really, in my view, the deep un-American nature of intentionally trying to uproot or interfere with the elections process. So we know, and I expect a lot of our deterrent work was successful, which is a good thing. And we also know that we had practices in place to, if something arose, enable it to be solved right away by the precinct captain. And the protocols and parameters that we have put in place recently over the last year, I think also contributed to clerks and precinct chairs being empowered to de-escalate anything that may have arisen. The other thing is that, our elections are secure and accurate. And so there's really oftentimes very little reason to see valid challenges. We want to be open and transparent and ensure challenge process works. But we were very clear that we wouldn't at any point allow any disruptions or interference or intimidation. And I believe a lot of that preparedness helped deter potential disruption today.
Would that be largely in part what you've learned since 2020 and what happened in the state then?
Yeah, I think a lot of what you saw unfold today was a reflection of how we have become even more stronger as a community and more prepared for any contingency as a result of what we've endured the last few years, and certainly as a result of what we went through, not just in the 2020 election itself, but in the months that followed. And you see that unfolding as well so far in the Detroit Absentee Counting Board, where processes there are also smooth and improved and streamlined from years past. So, that's why, to me, really in a lot of ways, the untold story, or the story that doesn't get a lot of attention around elections, is how much we've improved and how much stronger democracy has actually become as a result of the challenges it's endured over the last several years. And I anticipate and hope that we'll continue on that trajectory in the years ahead.
Yeah. Secretary, how many, can you guys give, we've been asking all day. I just asked Daniel Baxter. He tells me, I've been in the
You want some numbers?
All day. The numbers
Yep.
of precincts affected by that e-public issue. That's what I'm worried about.
It doesn't seem, it doesn't seem that it was more than a handful, if that. I mean, it was that small. It was really just individual anecdotal reports. And then as soon as a couple came in, my understanding is, and I don't mean to speak for them, but my understanding is the city of Detroit quickly issued a explanation and protocol for all precincts so that it minimized the potential for it reoccurring.
Sure. And then same day registration.
Yep.
Do you have updated numbers on that?
Yeah, so a couple updated numbers for you. As I said, 2 million absentee ballots were requested. As of 8:30, we know 1.8 million were returned, but still, that a lot of that's coming in. In Detroit, 90,000 or so absentee ballots were requested. We know about 80,000 or so have been returned so far, and 60,000 have already been processed and tabulated. For same registrations, we know so far 14,000 eligible citizens registered and voted today. And many of those were in college communities. And we know also still in Ann Arbor and East Lansing, there are still, as of about 9 p.m., there were 200 people in line in East Lansing, about 500 people in line in Ann Arbor, still waiting to register and vote. So we're working in those cases with both city clerk's offices to expedite that process. But it is a process, because the registering a voter and then giving them a ballot takes time. So that will continue to play out in the hours ahead. Grand Valley State University, we also saw the same sort of issue occur with students registering and voting there. That line was almost done by 9 p.m. So all that to say is our same day registration numbers will likely uptick in the hours ahead as things continue to unfold there. And that's a lot of what our focus will be on in the next few hours. Yeah.
How is the Bureau of Elections preparing for the possibility that multiple counties don't certify their election results?
I think the law is clear. The county canvassers, as well as the state board of canvassers, have a responsibility under the law, a ministerial role to, after the canvass is complete, certify the election results. So we'll continue to serve on the county and state level. So we've just tried to minimize any confusion that may arise if a county state does run afoul of their legal obligations. If that does, I predict it will be quickly addressed. If a county does not certify, it'll go to the state to certify. If the state board of canvassers deadlocks or fails to certify, it will go to the Supreme Court to compel certification. So it's a pretty cut and dry process, as it always has been, and we simply just hope that at every point in it, those officials within it follow their rules and their laws.
Secretary, based on some of the early numbers that we've heard, it sounds like statewide we could see some record-breaking turnout,
Yeah.
certainly higher than 2018. Whereas here in the city, there's an expectation that it could be lower than 2018.
Mhm.
So for statewide turnout to be so high within the largest jurisdiction, it would be below our last midterm election. I'm just wondering what do you think that means?
Yeah, I mean, we'll get a better sense, more clarity of the numbers as they unfold in the days ahead. Certainly, I think when I took office as Secretary of State, we looked at the lowest turnout precincts all across the state, and the 100 lowest turnout precincts, consistently about half of them, 40 or so, are in Detroit. So we know there's issues, and there's more we can do to ensure people know the power of their voice and their vote. Also saw a lot of energy and high turnout in Flint and other large cities in the state. So it shows also that people are participating, people are voting, young people are voting. So we'll unpack a lot of those numbers in the weeks ahead. But certainly I'm very gratified by the fact that across the Detroit city, the process did go smoothly today. The absentee counting board process is going smoothly, and that's really our priority in moments like these.
You brought back some offices to Detroit that had previously been closed. I'm just wondering if that's having any impact on early registration or any kind of tangible.
Yeah, we haven't seen any data points that suggest the fact that we opened a Secretary of State branch office on Warren Avenue recently impacted turnout or anything like that. I imagine a lot of exit polls and a lot more research is going to be done on all of this in the weeks ahead. I think at any point, though, we want to continue to encourage every community in our state to have to be engaged and have high turnout. And of course, we can't ignore the fact that Detroit, as other cities in America like Philadelphia and Milwaukee, they have been under the attention of election deniers trying to deter people having faith in their voice and their vote over the last several years, and certainly the last weeks leading up to this election. I don't know if that has had any effect, but it's certainly a relevant factor in moments like these. Other questions?
What does the rest of your night look like? I guess, what is your office monitoring throughout the week?
I think the biggest thing we'll continue to monitor are the voters still waiting in line to vote. Essentially, Ann Arbor and East Lansing, those students still waiting to register and vote. I know there are a lot of folks there helping to expedite that process. We have in Ingham and Washtenaw County and Ingham County, as well as the city of Lansing, have sent support to East Lansing and Ann Arbor to provide personnel to help smooth things along. So we'll continue to monitor that and then just provide support for the absentee counting tabulation that will continue throughout the night. But I'm very encouraged by how, though we always, as I said, prioritize security and accuracy, we see the efficient tabulation of ballots, absentee ballots, and other ballots unfolding as well. So I'm hopeful and optimistic that we'll see results sooner rather than later.
Your opponent picked up on the e-poll book issue pretty quickly. The former president also put a comment out on Truth Social. I saw you react to that on your social media. Your office, the Detroit clerk's office, worked quickly to address the issue and put out information on it, but they didn't stop your opponent and other Republican officials claiming fraud, claiming an issue. So, how do you close that gap? You've done what you can to address the issue and make sure voters can vote. There are still people out there who are going to claim that there's a problem.
Yep.
What do you do?
Yep. Exactly that. I mean, our first priority is simply just protecting the process, making sure people can vote, making sure we solve any issue. And then we recognize that what I would refer you see candidates do it, you see former presidents do it. Essentially, bad actors or folks with bad intentions will exploit these traditionally mundane and harmless issues to try to spread misinformation, raise money, gain celebrity, get in the news, deter, delegitimize, deter voting, delegitimize democracy. All of it is a really unfortunate reflection of where we are and why we continue. And I continue to say that we're in the middle of a multi-year effort to protect democracy against efforts to delegitimize it. It certainly is, and you see this happening in other states today as well. In a elections process, there are always things that potentially could be seized upon that really have no impact on the election process itself, and in any other situation would be minor, but would be seized upon and exploited to further political gains or partisan agendas. And I think voters just need to see that for what it is and to recognize that that's a political strategy. It's not a reflection in any way about a lack of security of the system or any actual problems with the elections themselves. It's more of a reflection of a political strategy that some have chosen to pursue, I think, to the detriment of who we are as Americans and our democracy. But at the same time, I think we just all need to start seeing clearly what it is and calling it out as such. And I've seen an uptick of that essentially over the last few years, months. We've been dealing with this, and certainly what unfolded today underscored that. I quickly called out the misinformation for what it was. People accepted that, people saw that for what it was, and that helped us also minimize the potential for more destruction.
I wish the federal government had done more to prosecute, indict, go after the bad actors who played a role in causing problems in 2020 that instead have not been held accountable and could potentially cause similar problems that we saw unfold in 2020.
Yeah, I certainly think we need to see more accountability for those who are trying to disrupt and delegitimize democracy. And my role as the state's chief election administrator, my job is simply just to make sure that the elections continue to be run smoothly, speak the truth, and protect the system against efforts to delegitimize it. So that's what I've been doing, while also cooperating with law enforcement and others as we can to ensure there's accountability. And I remain hopeful and optimistic that sometimes seeking legal accountability takes time, but I know there are many pieces in place that may be moving in that direction. But again, that doesn't deter me from my responsibility, which is simply just protecting the process, protecting the voters, protecting election workers, and making sure people know the truth about all elections. So thank you all. Have a good evening. I know our work is not yet done, and we'll continue in this path together. Thank you all. Have a good night.